Explained by the Billy Meier Contacts. Mysteries, myths, legends, conspiracy theories, historical inaccuracy. Compiled by David Chance, revised October 18, 2023.
Creation, universal consciousness, universal mind. See also creation energy, spirit. See also creational laws. See concepts. Values and wise advice from the Billy Meier Contacts. Ask its explanations Part 1.
3rd February 1953. Creation is the foundation of life and of being. We fulfill our mission in the strength of creation, which has not only cosmic but universal significance, because creation is life and creation is being. Ask its explanations. Part 2. 4th of February 953. The entirety of mathematics is based in a closed ring which can be calculated at any time by the numbers 3, 7, 12, and 7x7, since the primordial is itself a perfect roundness, perfect to the smallest degree, a roundness of the relatively perfect in mastery of the becoming and passing away in the creation itself. However, it is not permitted for me to explain this in detail, and thereby bring the solution of the great mystery to the earth humans. For in doing so, I would be violating the laws of the primordial being itself. For it is in the will of the primordial being that an evolving life form should itself find its way to the solution of these mysteries, in order to attain the knowledge which will enable the life forms concerned of the most diverse universes and worlds to apply and use their knowledge in accordance with nature and according to the creational guidelines. Ask its explanations Part 6. Emmanuel. My teaching, which I spread in these lands, is not new, and it is well known to the scribes. But they falsify the old teaching of the prophets which was handed down to them, and is very learned. But they disdain and falsify it, and interpret it to their own advantage. Therefore, they accuse me of lying because I preach against their lies. From the old teaching of the laws of creation and the spirit, they have set up erroneous cults which take freedom of consciousness from the human and drive him into servitude, whereby they can enrich themselves with his possessions. From the spiritual teaching, they have made a false teaching, and they have abased creation to a human entity, which they call God. But God is a ruler over humankinds and over worlds, and he can never be put on a level with creation, because its being is the highest, and outside of it, truly, nothing exists. They have transformed the teaching of the Spirit and the laws and recommendations of creation into a very evil cult and frighten the humans with death, with the vengeance of their bloodthirsty God and with sword-bearing angels. They teach the humans to be afraid of the splendor and allness of creation because they deny its existence and replace it with their God and their saints. Emmanuel. As I therefore speak and teach of creation, the texts are being falsely modified in such a way that mendacious words are put into my mouth, and I am supposed to have spoken of a Father in heaven, the gathering of a host of angels, and many other false things. But I have never done that, because these forms do not correspond to the truth. I have always faithfully spoken of the truth of creation as being of creation, and of God as being of God. God was never put on a level with creation by me, because God is a creature of creation, as are you and I and every other human. In his form, he is a king of wisdom and a ruler over human races, in the same way that a king or emperor also is a ruler over human races on earth. But creation is the immeasurable secret and the creation of every creation. It is omnipotence, knowledge, wisdom, love, omniscience, and being. And my teachings speak of it alone, when I talk of it and its laws and recommendations, and of the power of eternity. Translator's note: sentence 226 is omitted in the original. Truly, this alone is the truth and nothing else.
Contact Report 001
Above all, there is only one thing that possesses the power over life and death of every creature. This is the creation alone, who has laid out her laws over everything, laws that are irrefutable and that have eternal validity. The human being can recognize them in nature if he or she strives for it. They show him or her the path of life and the path to the spiritual and consciousness-based greatness, which represent the life determination. But as the human being indulges in his or her religions, and thus in evil, irrational teachings, his or her consciousness atrophies more and more and leads ultimately to a bottomless abyss. The human being may realize that a God can never assume the role of the creation or determine the destiny of the human being. A God is only a ruler, and moreover a human being, who mightily exercises rule or tyranny over his fellow human beings. God is not the creation, but only a creature of her, like all creatures dependent on the creation. However, the human being chases after his or her religious irrational belief and claims that God is the creation herself. But he or she goes even further and claims that an ordinary earth human named Emmanuel, who through deliberate error is also called Jesus Christ, would be the Son of God and would be the creation herself. Different sectarians of the new time go even further and claim things that already come close to insanity. The creation herself never gives commands because she embodies the mightiest in this universe and never needs commands or religions.
Contact Report 006.
I am interested in the development of the life, its classification, the spirit and its development, and how it is concerning the so-called rebirth.
Therefore, concerning this, I can also only explain to you what is known to us and what we assume to be given. On the whole, there are actually only 5 very important points that we exactly know of, while 2 further points are of no certainty yet for us either. This is because they already lead us into the secrets of the creation, which is unapproachable for us too. The twilight sleep of the creation outlasts 7 periods, eternities. Great times, 311,000, 40,000 years amount to 1 period eternity, great time. By the twilight sleep of the creation, all life and the entire universe cease to exist. Only after her newly awakening does she begin to create everything anew. During her twilight sleep, there is neither space nor time. There is only the nothing, since they lie asleep in the unending womb of the creation and the null time. If there is no creating thought, then there is also no power, no time, and no space. There is only duration in the nameless nothing. But concerning the nameless nothing, don't think too much about it, for it is also a mystery to us, which we cannot solve.
Contact Report 008.
Material is the embodiment of an idea. As energy, material is fine fluidal, and as mass, it is just highly concentrated and condensed. Both types can be produced by apparatus, which you two are already practicing in various forms. Normally, however, they are produced completely naturally, namely through spiritual power, which is preceded by the idea. Fundamentally, the creation is responsible for this, a tremendous spiritual form, a factor that, in turn, embodies your kind of energy. It is from the creation that the idea arises. The power of the spirit which, in turn, embodies energy, then condenses and concentrates the idea into fine fluidal energy, which is then condensed by even greater concentration into the coarse substantial, into the material.
Then the whole universe, with all the trimmings, is actually only an idea condensed and concentrated into the fine fluidal and coarse substantial energy?
Sure.
What then is this tremendous spiritual form, the creation factor?
The creation consists of an idea in the creation, condensed in the creation to the Urkind spiritual energy. We also do not know more about the creation.
Then you do not really know more than I do in this regard.
That is so, because when a life form is able to reveal this secret, it becomes part of the creation as such. Particularly, the scientists are always the ones who first recognize the truth, that above a life form and above all stands the creation alone, who behaves completely passively, however, in every respect toward any creations and events in the universe. The naming as such of the creation says what the creation is about. The creation is the creation. Over 7 great times, the creation creates life in countless forms over and over again. The creation constantly creates new life forms, unstoppably. But once these are created, they are left to their own devices, with the life task of their development.
Contact Report 010.
The sunlight only results from the warmth of the sun, which it first has to generate through its processes. But so, too, there is an all-creating existence in the universe, which existence creates by virtue of own powers, powers which, following certain creational laws, follow as truth, knowledge, and essence of wisdom, the endless aeons constantly and unswervingly according to a given equal guideline, and give life. This powerful existence, however, is the creation. And therefore, there is only one existence which rules everywhere in the universe. Only one creation. Only one truth, one knowledge, and one essence of wisdom, which are equally directed and remaining the same for eternal times. The eternal truth is not subject to any fluctuations or any changes, and its laws never have to be revised and, therefore, never have to be adapted to a new time. Essence of wisdom is a distinctive attribute of the creation, which dwells as a part of the creation, as spirit in the human being. Love and essence of wisdom belong together, because the creation and the laws of creation are love and essence of wisdom at the same time. Where there is essence of wisdom and knowledge, there is love and cognition, and where there is cognition and love, there is the creation. Growth in the love and essence of wisdom teach the human being to recognize the creation. This mighty, tremendous, and all-creational spiritual intelligence of the existence creation. And the human being is connected with this immense spirit, with these Urkind powers of the existence, of the creation, of the spiritual intelligence, because a part piece of this spirit intelligence of the creation dwells as spirit in the human being and gives life to him or her. Because the creation is in all and everything is animated by its spirit, wherethrough everything is one in all. Creation and truth are always the same, today and tomorrow. They are always remaining the same and of eternally equal value. They do not change, neither by name nor by form, as the creation and the truth are nameless and formless. So the human being is to hold fast onto the creational, since this alone is the truth. The truth is that which is immortal, like the creation as such. It is that which is eternal in time, that which is relatively absolutely fully developed, that which is worth all energies and the total investment of will by the human being, because with it, the human being does not fall prey to any deception. The creation is included in everything created, in everything that unfolds and further develops itself.
Contact Report 011.
Philosophical insight into the psychological nature of human beings forces the recognition and knowledge of the reality of the cosmic consciousness. The creational life power as the basis and life of psychological beings. The human being lives because the creation exists, and his life must be so balanced and relatively perfect as the creation itself is balanced and relatively perfect. The human being lives in the creation being. It breathes and hovers in him.
Contact Report 018.
The human being should try to react to the word or the term creation as if something very beautiful or good is being referred to, through which a change should be effected in his or her thinking. But since this does not happen, in so far he or she has not recognized the creation for what it really is. But how can the word and the designation creation attain such a deep significance for the human being that a change in his or her entire psychological way of behaving occurs, in his or her emotional awareness, his or her feeling of life, his or her ways of reacting, if he or she does not constantly and repeatedly ponder over the nature of the creation? The human being should try quite simply to bring certain designations of characteristics, which are applicable in regard to the nature of creation, like ever-present, almighty, and all-knowing, into association with the word or the designation creation. The everyday human being, as well as the common human, the so-called atheist, the egoist and materialist, the agnostic, find the word creation highly uninteresting. Yet why? To them it is entirely unknown, and they have no idea what the creation essentially is. But so it is with very many human beings with the term creation. Thousands of millions of human beings who are led into delusion by religions do not understand the word creation. If they pronounce the unreal religious name God, then they are of the gone astray view that in this way the creation would be referred to. Yet what an evil irrational teaching that is. Therefore, it is very important to know as much as possible about the nature of the creation and to experience it so that the word becomes meaningful, lifts one up inwardly, and leaves an impression as soon as it is heard. The experience reveals that the creation is unending beauty, a beauty above all beauty, boundless, intense happiness without end, essence of wisdom, knowledge, ability, truth, and absolute distinctness. Once that is recognized by the human being, then he or she instantly traces every one of his or her joys back to its origin, to the infinite joy of creation. Wherever he or she sees something beautiful, be it a flower, an animal, or a human being, or anything else, he or she thus instantly brings it into association with the unending beauty of the creation herself. Wherever the human being sees cognition reach expression in one form or another, in an impressive and uplifting manner, there he or she knows that it has its roots in the endless cognition that is the creation. Wherever life stirs, be it even in just the tiniest being, in a creature, such as, for example, the microbe, there, behind this life, he or she glimpses the endless, the eternal, and the creational. From that, he or she attempts to deepen and expand his or her understanding and feeling by thinking the nature of the creational and its inescapable presence over, at any time and in any space in many kinds of ways, in daily life and experience. The creation exists in every human being as a part piece of himself or herself. Once this thought has deeply penetrated the human being and become his or her experience, then any fear and all doubt in him or her disappear. Once he or she knows that the creation is all-knowing and almighty, then he or she gains peace and security in his inner self, and is immune from stupid thoughts and wrong feelings. Repeated pondering over the ever-presence, truth, essence of wisdom, and the ability and knowledge of the creation as permanently eternal, as dignity and value, allows the word and the designation creation to become something very meaningful in the human being, something which evokes transformations in the feelings and transformations in his or her manner of thinking. The more his or her intelligence is effective in this direction, the more it gains radiating light, the more powerful his or her personality becomes, and the more prosperous his or her whole life and work becomes. Again and again, the human being who lives in clarity of consciousness produces in himself or herself anew the strong, fine spiritual perception that the creational is far more real than that which his body feels. This fine spiritual perception incessantly rules the human being who lives for the spirit. The creational takes possession of his or her consciousness, which is why his or her senses are full of peace, strength, joy, knowledge, essence of wisdom, truth, and hope. All measures taken by the normal human beings in their material intellectual thinking to attain peace, happiness, and strength always turn out to be deceptive, while this permanent controlledness of the human being who is living according to the Spirit is pulsed through by the dynamic power of the creation. The human being who lives for the Spirit is very dynamic in all things. He or she incessantly attempts to reach his or her fulfillment as quickly as possible. Therefore, as long as he or she lives, he or she uses the time with all the energy available to him or her for turning himself or herself to the creational ability. He or she will never allow this undertaking to be lost. All kinds of things can happen over time, yet his or her desire for the creational will never disappear in him or her. He or she may encounter obstacles, suddenly have no sense and taste anymore for necessary material things, but he or she never loses the taste and sense for the creation, because he or she knows that the creation embodies the true being.
Contact Report 028.
According to natural and creational laws, everything has its own ironclad order, and this is also to be followed by the earth human. If an individual disregards a law or recommendations, he or she not only causes himself or herself personal harm, but also affects others. This is the law of the spiritual power and of the consciousness power, which spread their swinging waves to all life forms. Through a consciously committed guilt, wide waves are thrown, which also hit innocent people with their beating powers. This is a law of nature in order to create unity in cooperation.
Contact Report 031.
Apart from the creation itself, nothing is venerable, universal loving, omnipotent, eternal, and awesome. It is the beginning and the end of all being and being itself. Apart from her, nothing is existent.
Creation is neither a he nor a she, for it is quite simply the creation, the sexless one, thus effectively an it.
Creation itself lives in a conscious creating state during 7 great times. Then it lies down to slumber for as many great times, in order to awake and create again for 7 great times. Thus it develops itself and finally perfects itself through its 7x7 total periods to the primordial creation, in order to then itself beget a life-stable creation, which is again devoted to exactly the same laws. 1 great time is 311,301,000,000,000 and 40,040,000,000 Earth years, which Earth humans equate with an eternity, but this is an enormous miscalculation. For 1 eternity is equal to 2,177,000,000,000,000 and 280,280,000,000 years. The mathematical formula is therefore 1 great time, 311,040,000 Earth years. 7 great times, 2,177,280,000 Earth years. 7x7 great times, 15,240,960,000 Earth years. 0 all great time. This is the creation-based time formula of the existence of the creation. Like every life form, the creation also has its course of development and evolution, except that its time values are anchored in very high values. Thus, the creation does not only go through millions and billions of years for the fulfillment of its evolution in a great time, but many trillions of years. A sub-level or small time is thus about 44,044,000 years, during which time it evolves upwards through 7 such periods to the next higher level. It, too, like the material life forms, has 7 plateaus or major times, which are subdivided into sub-times or sub-stages of the same number. If the life forms ultimately enter into the creation itself as perfection, then it evolves further into relative perfection within itself, and, after passing through the 7x7 great times, becomes the primordial creation and begets a new creation out of this form. The diversity of the creation knows no bounds.
Contact Report 053.
The universe is the inner and outer body of creation. In its entirety pulsates the universal mind and the universal consciousness and the power of life, of existence in general. This is permeated by everything, and everything is permeated by it, so everything forms a unity in itself. All life and all evolution admitted to it also takes place in this unity itself. So the universe is the inner and outer body of creation. At the same time, everything existing in it is also inner and outer at the same time. But all life springs from this itself, and in it all developmental evolves. So every creation has emerged from inside and outside, develops inside and outside, and perfects itself in the same form in order to enter into the absolute power of the creation as an absolute power inside and outside. The consistency of this fact can be represented schematically with the graphic representation, whereby the outer 2 semicircles record the egg-shaped spiral of creation, in which even everything develops spirally from the absolute power to the absolute power. The connecting lines from the material primary level to the absolute levels of creation embody the permanent connection of the 2 material forms of existence of a gross and subtle nature, which are maintained by willpower at the exit from absolute power until re-entry into absolute power. The same applies to the material intellect will. The different levels are also recognizable from the representation. If my earlier explanations are called in to help, see Contact Report 06. 299 or, whereby it can also be recognized that the Earth human is to be classified into the 6th step of the 2nd level of development, which corresponds to a still lower state, and says that these life forms only slowly advance to the frontiers of the recognizable truth and only attain the most minimal realizations of spiritual values.
Contact Report 069.
Beautifully put, but now explain what creation actually embodies in and of itself. I think that it is not a human or other material being or an individual ethereal being, but simply the universal consciousness.
With this, you have already given the explanation. I cannot explain any more about it because our knowledge is limited in this respect as well. Creation is the same as universal consciousness, which directs, thinks and rules in the being of consciousness as a double spiral egg formation, which at the same time forms the universe in its 7-belted growing extension, whereby the double spiral arms live, pulsating as spiritual energy and rotate against each other. We do not have more knowledge about creation itself. Like you, we only know the causes and the effects, the existence and the laws and recommendations, but nothing more.
Contact Report 841.
Quantum technology is actually based on the fact that it can be used, for example, to explain the basic behavior of energy and matter in the atomic and subatomic range. Quantum technology is actually the basis of so-called modern physics, which is actually concerned with creation energy, but which is still erroneously called spirit. This is probably from a religious point of view, because the Earthling is a believer in religion. In the level of creation energy, that is to say the quantum level, as it can also be called, which for the time being is probably the last realization for physics, is actually the level of the original substance of matter. This level, which precedes matter, has no measurable particles for material technology, and likewise no waves, because it already reaches the area of the outer levels of creation energy, which can no longer be measured with gross material apparatus. This energy level is distributed in the entire space of creation, that is to say in the entirety of all 7 universes, each of which has a different dimension and exists within one another. So we can speak of a quantum field that is in itself superluminously attuned to all forms of creation energy, thus permeating all 7 dimensions of the 7 universes in creation space. This field is actually egg-shaped. The creation with all its 7 dimensions, which are interwoven and independent of each other, is, roughly speaking, egg-shaped. The creation, I will explain, is a gigantic all-consciousness, which is not only single universal, but 7-fold universal and thus all creative, once arising from the absolute absolutum, which developed via the primordial absolutum, then the creation absolutum, super absolutum, and further via the Sohar absolutum, then the being absolutum, and finally found its original origin in the Nihilo, the absolute nothing sea book. Billy, primordial origin of all existence. Unfortunately, I cannot say much about all that is commonplace in earthly physics, because my knowledge of physical moments only relates to a general knowledge that I learned from Svath and at school. But the truth is nevertheless, the whole of creation has nothing to do with the limited cosmos, which alone comprises only the 4th belt of the 7-fold belts of the universe, which again is only one part of the 7-fold creation, which in itself contains 7 universes, each of which exists in a different dimension within the other. The Nihilo itself is the unrevealing, the formless, unfathomable and unspeakable, and the essence of the primal ground of all existence, from which alone everything has emerged.